Next question, please. I would leave Britain and get out of Britain without regard for consequences, because my first duty is not to my husband, not to my children, and not to my parents. My first duty is to Allah and to His Messenger. When I show backbone made out of steel, and I leave and I go to a place of greater security and safety, and this is called hijrah, I make hijrah, then Allah in His kindness can open the doors of mercy to me, and my children may eventually join me, and then my husband himself may have a change of his heart and join me. But if I remain where I am, nothing will change. Surely Allah does not change the condition of a people until they, the people, using Allah's guidance, take the initiative to change their own condition. That's my answer. Yes, I totally agree with that comment. I totally agree with it. I would like now to further elaborate on that hadith. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold. If you are persuaded that it is a mountain of the metal which is going to come, because the Aslaf never spoke about anything other than a literal interpretation. They never understood it other than literally. Oh, that's the evidence you say there is. Then you are entitled to remain for that mountain of gold, as you are entitled to remain for the flying donkey. However, we look at it differently, and we are entitled to the freedom to do it. We consider this to be religious symbolism. You're free to differ with us. Why the boxing gloves over this issue? We say that it's not a mountain of gold, it's a black gold. And that black gold, the oil has already functioned and has already been functioning as gold to keep the US dollar alive and flying high. But he went on to say that mankind will fight over that gold, and 99 out of every 100 will die. But he also said that the believers should not touch that gold. If our interpretation is correct, the answer is that the believers should not touch that oil. And we are about to understand why he said that. Because the oil is a rope around your neck. They have given us that oil as the oil with which our transportation operates now. We don't use horses anymore, and donkeys and mules that Allah gave us, and it's in the Quran. Allah speaks about it in the Quran, but we've abandoned what Allah gave us, and we now use mechanized transport which run on oil, and aeroplanes on oil, and ships on oil. Everything in transport is oil. So if you don't have oil, you come to a standstill. There are going to be riots. Agriculture today is dependent on oil and fertilizers. Industry, manufacturing, dependent on oil. The whole economy is dependent on oil. And if you don't have the oil, you have to get it from outside. And they can take control of that oil. Notice that they've taken control of oil wherever in the world oil was discovered. Look at history. Look back at history these last 100 years and ask yourself, why have they made sure that they've taken control of oil wherever in the world oil existed? It's only a matter of time for Chavez. It's only a matter of time for Evo Morales in Bolivia, Chavez in Venezuela, because they want control of the oil. Why? The answer is when they have total control of the oil, and they bring down the world of paper money, and they bring down the economy and runaway inflation, prices rising, cost of living increasing, poverty increasing, that's the time You won't be able to afford to buy the oil. And if you don't buy the oil, there's going to be riots in your country. Watch it, Pakistan. How do you get the oil? Answer, you got to bow down and worship Dajjal, meaning you got to submit to Israel. That is why he said, don't touch the oil. So I agree with that question about the likelihood of the Straits of Hormuz being closed and rising prices of oil and so on in consequence of an attack on Iran. Yes, next question. It is the Quran to which you must now all turn. The Quran is not just a book whose pages you turn and you recite. The Quran is the word of Allah. And the word of Allah is a divine attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The word of Allah is a divine attribute, the kalam of Allah. You must love the Quran. You must love the Quran. You must constantly recite the Quran. If you cannot recite the Quran in Arabic, stop what you're doing and go and learn to recite the Quran in Arabic. You should try to recite the Quran every day. And the best time to recite the Quran is at the time of Fajr, before the Salat or after the Salat. You must recite the Quran cover to cover. Cover to cover. Even if you don't understand what you're reciting. Understanding will come later. And when you have started to recite the Quran, you must also study the Quran. There's a methodology for studying the Quran, and I've explained that methodology several times in my lectures. The Quran is Noor, and you will not be able to see unless Allah puts Noor in your heart. And the major vehicle through which Noor will come to you is through the Quran. And Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is the teacher of the Quran. And so it is to him you must go, that he may teach you the Quran. But you must love the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And loving the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is loving his sunnah. It is not love for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam that you should adopt a cosmetic version of Islam. I spoke previously about Protestant Islam. I'm now speaking about cosmetic Islam, part-time Islam. That you take part of the sunnah and you abandon the other part. No, you must adopt the whole sunnah. And the whole sunnah involves at its very heart resisting oppression in the world. There's more oppression in the world today than ever before, and oppression is constantly increasing. So love the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and follow his sunnah. And through the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam you will get Noor. Without Noor you cannot see. And finally there's Salat. Salat is Noor. And it is in Salat that you can make Mi'raj. It is on Salat that you can travel. Travel beyond this world to worlds that exist beyond, to the Samawat. And partake, not to partake really, but to penetrate and to experience reality beyond material reality. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may bless you in that effort. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.